and we're going to get into the fall camp intel, right? Moving right along into fall camp, we talked about the injury updates, Jordan. We talked about the guys that are a bit limited right now, but let's talk about some of the noise and some of the intel and just some of the little pieces that are starting to trickle out from fall camp via media members, via different interviews with guys. And go ahead and hit a couple things this week that have stood out from you, just that you've either read or heard in an interview that really stood out with you, that's kind of made you kind of think a little bit differently about this team heading into the 2024 season.
Yeah, so I mean, I want to start with this, and I think it's something that should be established and said, because it's reality. Everything I've gathered at this point, the defense is ahead of the offense. I don't think that should be any surprise to anybody, and it's not indicative of anything necessarily for Clemson's offense this year. I mean, we know how talented this defense is, but also, that's just the standard, basically, anywhere. Like at this point in fall camp, you're always going to have your defense, pretty much always going to have your defense ahead of your offense. The times you don't, or actually the times you probably are, you might want to be concerned. It's not universal. It's not like it's not like a law or anything like that. But that tends to be how these things go, especially in fall camp. And we're only a week in, so. But you've heard a lot of really good things from the offense as far as kind of the formations that they've been using, how Cade has looked. A lot of positive things about Cade. The competition on the line of scrimmage from the offensive line, it's been apparently it's been a marked improvement over last year. There's a lot more functional competition and a lot more functional depth on the offensive line than you had last year. So that was exciting to hear. And that was kind of the attitude. We got to kind of get some insight on that on some interviews today after their practice earlier this afternoon from Khalil Barnes and Avion Terrell, and they talked about kind of the progress that the offense has made, and kind of what Garrett Riley especially has done differently this year. And they mentioned how Garrett was throwing a lot more stuff at them. The route combinations were a lot different. I believe it was Khalil Barnes that said, a lot of what they did last year, there was a lot of pick routes and underneath stuff. Wasn't a whole lot of variation. And this year it's just been a lot different, and the defense has been on their toes. Tyler Venables talked about it as well. Especially talking about Cade, and he said, I get upset when they score on us, but then, in the back of my mind, it's like, well, it's also a really good thing too. So I think that, there's been a lot of positive from the offensive side of things, as far as the offensive line, as far as Cade, and the play calling and kind of philosophy. Offensively has been tweaked a little bit, and I think Garrett Riley has. I think he kind of has a better feel with what he has this year, and I think he likes what he has a lot better this year. And he's definitely. I think they're in a position to be a little bit more dynamic offensively, and that's because that's what Garrett Riley's offense wants to be. It's throw a lot of formations at you. It's not overly complicated, but you can do a lot of the same thing from different formations and make it hard on the defense because it gives them so many looks. That's what you want, and especially when you can incorporate the tempo and the quarterback run game, it's a really, really tough offense to stop. And we saw, when it was at its best at TCU, that's what they're going for. And they did some aspects of that well. They ran a ton of plays, but they weren't overly explosive. In fact, they were very not explosive. One of the worst offenses in terms of explosive play rate. It might be the worst when you consider the volume of plays. So, maybe not worse than Iowa, but you were a little, you were bordering that territory of lack of explosiveness. You were just a lot more efficient than they were. So, now it's about, getting it to that point where everybody is comfortable. The camaraderie with Cade and the receivers has gotten a lot of praise as well. And that's ultimately what's going to, be the difference in whether or not this offense gels into what we hope and think it can be with the potential and the weapons that I think will be at their disposal this year.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of what you said makes sense, and it should give some Clemson fans some cautious optimism. Like we've stated all offseason, me and you are going to fully 100% hang out in this kind of cautious, optimistic realm of thinking about Clemson football, at least from the offensive side of the ball and the offensive side of, our perspective on what the team is going to be in 2024. And some of the big things that I think stood out to me with, listening to interviews and reading articles and just kind of digesting the stuff coming out of fall camp is, Cade and the steps that he's taken to become a leader on the team. I think that's very important, and I think it's becoming more evident to me the evolution that he's made as a leader on the team. The more I hear individuals talk about Cade, not just on the offensive side of the ball, but you hear the guys on the defensive side of the ball echoing it, and they talk about one key point in his leadership that I think is important. And something new that he's added to his game this year, and that's being that vocal leader. That's being that guy that's out in front of the offense, the guy that's talking, the guy that's speaking, the guy that's commanding the room, commanding the locker room, if you will. And I think that's just it's a very underrated thing, and it's not always a natural thing for every single quarterback, but it's kind of a natural thing at the quarterback position for the rest of the team to want their quarterback to be that guy, right? And I think it's become very evident this offseason that Cade has tried to become that more vocal leader. I think he's a little more comfortable now being a junior, now being an upperclassman, now having a little bit more skin in the game, a little bit seniority in the program. He feels a lot more comfortable doing that. And you can tell that that the guys are responding to it. You can tell that they like it. They like that their quarterback is out there up front talking and being that vocal leader that they can look to and be like, all right, that's our guy, right? Even when he's struggling, hey, that's our guy, right? Go pick him up, right? So I think that's one of the big encouraging things for me that I'm hearing the most consistently coming out of fall camp. Yeah, you're going to hear, Cade's making plays and he's doing this and, the offense is scheming a little bit better. But those intangible things, those leadership qualities, I think are really starting to kind of change my perspective on some changes that Cade may have made this offseason. And I hope it translates onto the field because that's where it matters, right? We can hear all this stuff coming out of fall camp and it all sounds great. And it's all, rainbows and sunshine and, everything's great and kumbaya. But at the end of the day, on August 31st, we got to kick the ball off against Georgia, which is probably the best team in the country. And they're going to be looking to take our heads off, right? So, but I think it's important that he's taken that step. Another thing is the closeness of the team overall. I think since I'm just touching on intangible type things, not necessarily direct on the field things that we're hearing, but just intangibles. You've heard so many player interviews this year, more so than in the past, I think, about how close this team is and how much of a concerted effort they've made to become a close and find out each other. You've heard a lot of the players talk about it, and I'm assuming it's a message that Dabo is pushing in the locker room because he likes to do this.
Well,
you hear a lot of the players talking about the why, right? What's their why, right? What's the guy to their left and to their right? What's their why, right? Figuring out each and every person's why of why they do that, why they show up, why do they play football, why do they care so much, why does it mean so much, right? And I think that is kind of showing a unique personality that this team has taken on, and they're kind of, I don't know. To me, it kind of looks like they're circling the wagons, right? And they're becoming a very internal team. And I think that's important, especially with all the noise that has been surrounding the Clemson program, especially the past 3 seasons, especially after last season, after you dip below that 10-win mark for the first time in 12 seasons. Your program is steady regressing. You can just see the internals of this program just they're kind of circling their wagons, and they're about to, face it all outwards and be like us against the world. And I think that could go a long way, right? Obviously, Dabo Swinney does some of his best work and pulls some of the best strings when he's the underdog and he's the guy that, everybody's doubting and everybody's saying, oh, he can't do that. He can't do this. Clemson can't do that. Clemson can't do this. Dabo Swinney's loving it. But that's some of the stuff that I'm hearing coming out of fall camp. And then, some of the stuff that you were talking about, Khalil Barnes and AJ Terrell and Shelton Lewis and
wrong Terrell brother.
Oh, sorry, Avion Terrell. Excuse me, Avion Terrell. I wish we had
about AJ Terrell. We'll talk about it later.
I'll take both of them. They can be on islands all out there, right? But Avion Terrell, baby Terrell out there.
I don't know if he would appreciate that.
What's that?
I said I don't know if he would appreciate the baby Terrell.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Avion. If you see this, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that at all. I did not mean that. Excuse me. But and then hearing Tyler Venables talk today, bro, that dude, he sounds like Brent Venables. Oh my God.
He does.
Did you watch his interview?
He sounds like
if you close your eyes and don't look at the screen, you swear to God, it's like Brent Venables talking. Just some of the things that he says and how he says it, it sounds just like Brent Venables. It's so funny. But just hearing those guys talking and hearing about how they're being challenged by some of these young wide receivers and not just the young guys, but, some of the older guys in the room, Antonio Williams out there challenging people, making people better, right? I think it's good to hear that the offense is showing a lot of different looks, that the offense is challenging the defense in a way that, maybe they weren't able to last season because of the install and what got installed and what didn't get installed and, what was able to be digested and what wasn't. So a lot of interesting stuff coming out of fall camp for sure.
Yeah, man. And you hit on it. I mean, I think just you talked about the camaraderie and the chemistry that they've been building up in this offseason. I mean, we've talked about it. I mean, especially from the Cade angle. I mean, the lack of attrition on offense should tell you a lot. I mean, a lot of guys could have transferred last year that didn't. And I think that's just a testament, especially from the receiver standpoint. You lost one receiver, and I was not I was like after last year, there were a few guys that we were kind of had on our watch list. I was like, okay, I don't know if they are going to be in it for the long run or not, but the fact that they stuck it out, I think, does point to that belief in Cade and what he can bring to the table. And the stuff you've heard from fall camp so far has been encouraging. So, again, cautious optimism, but you're hearing the things that you want to hear, and that's really all you can ask for. Because I definitely wouldn't want to be hearing the opposite. Man, Cade is threw 3 picks in the scrimmage the other day, Cade, he still looks lost out there. He still looks like the game's moving too fast. Like I haven't heard anything from you and not like from people that would have a reason to lie about that kind of stuff. People who are their job is to cover that kind of stuff.
And you also sometimes reporters will ask guys about because Cade, he's a hot button topic, right? They're going to ask every freaking player about Cade. No matter who it is, whoever walks in front of the media, they're going to get a Cade question, right? They're probably going to get a Cade question. If they're on the defense, they're probably going to get a freshman wide receiver question, right? Those questions are going to happen. But what I notice is you're not seeing those guys struggle to articulate ways that they believe Cade has gotten better this season, right? And sometimes that's not always the case. Sometimes guys are like, you can tell they're like, they're trying to be nice. They're trying to search for the right words. Yeah. They're trying to do the coach speak thing. It doesn't seem like that to me. But again, these guys are prepped for interviews. So